My name is David. I'm 39 years old, though lately the mirror makes me look closer to 50. There's a certain weight that sits in a man's face after too many years of pretending everything is fine. Maybe it's not age that makes the eyes dull. Maybe it's recognition. The kind that comes too late to save anything worth keeping. I've been married to Laura for 11 years. We met when I was 28 and still believed love was a straight road. You work hard, you stay loyal, and everything else falls into place. She was vibrant then, full of that light that makes men think they've found something permanent. I mistook that light for warmth. We had 2 children, Emily, 9, and Joshua, 7. They were the anchor that kept me moving. I built our home around them, both literally and figuratively. The house had belonged to my grandfather, a craftsman who believed that every nail driven with patience could hold a lifetime together. Solid wood floors, tall windows, an old oak in the yard that brushed against the roof when the wind picked up. It was the kind of house that didn't creak when you walked through it. It breathed. Laura loved that house at first. She called it our forever place. She said she could see the kids running through the yard, growing up under that same oak, the seasons passing like chapters in a book we'd write together. I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. For years, I thought we were steady. There were fights, yes, the small kind that happen when 2 people are exhausted by life and routine. The kind you patch over with apologies and whine. But there was never shouting, never open resentment. At least not from her. Then, this past March, Laura told me she was taking a weekend trip to San Diego. A girl's getaway, she called it. She said she needed sun and rest, that the winter had drained her. She had a way of saying things that made me feel guilty for even hesitating. So I encouraged her. I even took 2 days off work to stay with the kids. You deserve it, I told her. Go, relax. I've got everything here. She smiled the way people do when they already know something you don't. That Friday evening, after I put Emily and Joshua to bed, my phone buzzed. A message from her. It was a photo. Laura in a hotel robe sitting on the edge of a bed. A glass of wine in her hand. Her hair loose, her smile wide, too wide, almost practiced. Behind her, soft hotel lighting painted everything gold. At first glance, it looked harmless, like something meant to reassure me that she was safe, that she was thinking of me. But the longer I looked, the less sense it made. The background was what did it. There was a chair near the corner of the room, on it a man's leather belt. Wide strap, silver buckle. Not hers. Not anything she would ever wear. By the door, a pair of sneakers, men's gray, size 11 maybe. The kind of shoes that belong to a man who runs but not often enough. My stomach tightened. The air left the room in small, uneven breaths. At first, I told myself there must be an explanation. Maybe the belt was part of the hotel decor. Maybe she'd borrowed a friend's room. Maybe the shoes belonged to another guest. But the lies you tell yourself out of love are never believable, even to the one saying them. I zoomed in on the photo until the pixels began to break apart. The reflection in the window caught a shadow, faint and blurred, the outline of someone standing just outside the frame. A man. Broad shoulders, close-cropped hair. Enough to confirm what the rest of the image had already confessed. I set the phone down, stared at the wall for a long time. The house was silent, the kind of silence that hums when you realize something in your world has shifted. The kids slept upstairs, their small breaths steady, innocent. I envied them. I went to the kitchen and poured a drink, whiskey, 2 fingers, neat. The glass trembled slightly in my hand, not from anger, but from clarity. There's a moment right before truth lands, when you want to believe ignorance is still an option. But ignorance has an expiration date, and mine had just passed. I looked at that photograph again. The robe she wore, white, embroidered with the hotel's name, Pacific Breeze Resort. The glass of wine half empty, her hand positioned carefully, nails manicured. The ring on her finger turned just enough that it caught the light. That detail K** led me more than anything else. She wanted the ring visible. She wanted the image to look faithful, safe. But everything else in the frame betrayed her. The way betrayal hides in plain sight. It doesn't shout. It whispers through details, through the fold of a sleeve, the placement of an object, the casual way someone says I love you before turning off their phone. I sat there for hours, staring at the image until my eyes burned. At some point, the house began to feel smaller, like the walls were drawing closer, listening. I could almost hear my grandfather's voice, the man who built this home brick by brick, whispering about the cost of false foundations. Laura texted again later that night. Miss you. Kids behaving? I typed out a reply, yes, they're fine. Hope you're having fun. And sent it without thinking. The words looked foreign on the screen, like something written by a stranger who still believed in us. When I put the phone away, I knew two things. First, the photograph was not a mistake. Second, I couldn't confront her yet, not without proof. That realization brought a kind of cold peace. Painful, yes, but precise. The kind that cuts through confusion and leaves only direction. I turned off the lights, walked upstairs, and paused outside the kids' rooms. Emily slept curled around her stuffed bear. Joshua had kicked off his blanket again, one arm thrown across his face. I adjusted it quietly, smoothing his hair. They didn't know. They didn't see the fracture forming beneath our feet. I went back downstairs and sat in the dark until dawn began to leak through the windows. The photograph still glowed faintly on the phone beside me, the man's belt and sneakers half hidden in shadow, patient, waiting. By sunrise, I had already made a decision, not to accuse, not yet. Truth deserves precision. I would find it. But in that hour before the world woke, one question repeated in my head, soft and cruel. Who takes a picture meant to reassure her husband and forgets to hide the man behind the camera? I didn't sleep. I waited. The house was a lung that refused to exhale. At 4 in the morning, I made coffee and opened Laura's laptop. She'd left it on the dining table, careless in the way people become when they think they're safe. The screen woke to her smiling face and the ocean behind her. Passwordless. Trust as a screensaver. I told myself this was wrong. Then I remembered the belt, the shoes, the shadow that wasn't mine. Morality sighed and stepped aside. Her email was a lake with no wind. Thousands of messages, color-coded, tidy. I searched for Pacific Breeze. The results rose like fish to the surface. Confirmation emails, loyalty points, a reservation for 2 guests. Not 3, not 4. 2. The subject line was cheerful. Your coastal escape awaits. It greeted her by first name and promised a king suite with partial ocean view. Check-in Friday, check-out Sunday. Breakfast for 2 included. 2. The number stood there between us like a witness who refused to lie. I opened her calendar. Girls' weekend repeated in pastel lavender, the kind of color you use for things you don't intend to forget. Attached were notes, restaurants, rooftop bars, a yoga class she would never attend. There was also a contact pinned to the top, Tom L., her boss, the man with the generous smile and the habit of touching elbows during meetings. I'd shaken his hand at the company picnic. It felt like a bet I hadn't realized I was making. The banking app required Face ID. The phone did not. It sat charging on the counter beside a wineglass etched with our anniversary date. I used her phone to open the app and stared at the ledger of our life. Charges like footprints along a wet shore. There it was, La Palma Azul, Oceanside, $320.18. 2 days earlier. A dessert added. A tip too eager. Laura never tipped that high. Someone did. I scrolled further. A boutique. Blue dress. The receipt snapped and saved. The note. For the breeze. I felt something inside me lift and then drop, like an elevator that misses a floor. I closed everything carefully, the way you close a door on a sleeping child. The evidence didn't scream. It didn't need to. It breathed, patient and warm, like the man in the edges of her photograph. At 7, the kids shuffled into the kitchen, hair wild, eyes soft with mourning. Emily asked if Mom had texted. I said yes. She said good night after the late movie. It was half true, half merciful. Joshua wanted pancakes. I made them perfect. Small victories in a war no one knows they're losing. When they were dressed, I called my brother. Aaron was the kind of man who never asked why until after he'd said yes. Could he take the kids to the zoo? To the aquarium? Anywhere with glass thick enough to keep them safe from the things that devour. He didn't hesitate. He'd pick them up at 9. I packed backpacks, wrote a note for the caretaker of the oak outside, watered the plants that would outlive us all. I hugged the children longer than they understood. Emily asked if I was okay. I said I just missed Mom. It wasn't a lie. Missing is another word for measuring distance you didn't choose. By 9:30 I was on the highway, I-5 unrolling like a confession. The sky was the color of steel. Seattle shrank in the rear view, gray shoulders hunched against the water. I passed exits I knew by heart, Tacoma, Olympia, names that once meant detours for ice cream, bathroom breaks, childish arguments about songs. Today they were mile markers along a slow descent. I kept the radio off. I wanted to hear the engine, the tires, the truth. Long stretches of forest gave way to fields, then to the sprawling hunger of cities. Portland slid by in a haze, bridges like ribs across the river. In Salem I stopped for gas and stared at the pump as if numbers could bless me. They didn't. In Eugene I bought coffee that tasted like burnt almonds and watched a woman kiss a man goodbye without looking at him. Everyone lies in public. They call it composure. South of Roseburg, the road narrowed and began to climb. Rain stitched the windshield. Wipers beat time like a tired heart. Between the clouds, hills like folded green blankets. I thought about the King Suite, about the robe, about the way Laura angled her face to the camera as if it could absolve her. I rehearsed questions, then threw them away. Words are useless when the answer is a photograph. By the California line, the sky opened. The border sign looked like a casual shrug. Welcome to the state where everything is performance and nothing is free. I kept driving. Reading. Then a floodplain of billboards promising relief for pain, debt, desire. Even mercy needs marketing. At a rest stop north of Sacramento, I washed my face and saw my father staring back at me from the mirror. Same jaw. Same refusal to look away when things turned ugly. He had always said, "A man can survive anything but a house that lies to him." I had thought it was melodrama. Now it was algebra. Traffic thickened near the Capitol. I crawled past men in reflective vests and a woman crying in a car 2 lanes over. Somewhere in that river of metal and heat, Laura laughed in a robe at a joke a man told her in a voice I did not know. The thought cut clean. I let it. I reached San Diego close to dusk. The ocean wore the light like an old dress. The GPS guided me to Pacific Breeze Resort, a hive of chrome and glass pretending to be calm. Palm trees held their breath. Valets moved like chess pieces. I parked a block away and walked, the evening wind full of salt and money. Inside, the lobby was a cathedral to surfaces. Marble that wanted to be touched. Glass that forgave nothing. A chandelier made of small ocean suns. People drifted past with suitcases slick enough to whistle. I stood in the shadow of a pillar and watched the bar. There she was. Laura. My wife. My stranger. She sat in a corner nook under a halo of warm light, the kind that flatters sinners and saints equally. The blue dress fit like an apology she never intended to say. She wore new earrings. She wore the version of herself reserved for beginnings. A man leaned toward her. Not a guess now. Tom. I knew his profile from company photos, from the way he laughed with his mouth more than his eyes. His hand covered hers. That casual, claiming gesture. He spoke. She tilted her head and smiled the smile she used to keep for me. My chest tightened as if remembering a password I no longer owned. I watched. I didn't blink. Witness is a form of love when love is over. They ordered a second drink. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, a movement that said they'd practiced this. She let him. She looked lighter than I'd seen her in months. I wondered if relief tastes like betrayal when you're the one left at home. I could have walked over. I could have said her name the way you say a prayer you don't believe in. Instead, I moved closer to the bar, behind a column of woven cane, and studied the angles. The room's design encouraged in asterisk Macy. Curved sofas, low light, a soundtrack that told you secrets were safe. The architect knew people. The architect knew lies. At some point Laura looked toward the lobby as if she'd felt a draft. For an instant her eyes slid across me and didn't recognize what they saw. Maybe that's the worst part of falling out of a life. You become unremarkable inside it. They rose. He guided her with a palm at the small of her back. Elevator doors parted like a mouth about to swallow light. The panel glowed. Numbers lifted them away. I was left with my reflection in the brass trim. A man who had done the math and finally believed the sum. I stood there until the doors returned and offered me nothing. Then I walked outside into air that smelled of hotel laundry and ocean fatigue. On the promenade, couples moved like promises that hadn't yet failed. I passed them all. I didn't yell. I didn't call. I didn't beg. I made a choice. Clarity is not loud. It is a blade resting quietly on the table, already knowing what it can do. I didn't drive home right away. I sat in the car across from the Pacific breeze for almost an hour, the engine off, the radio silent. The building shimmered in the heat, windows catching the last of the light. I could see the balcony of the suite I knew was theirs, curtains drawn, faint movement behind them. I tried to imagine her laughter inside that room, the same laugh that used to belong to our kitchen, our bed, our mornings. But imagination is mercy, and mercy had left me. I took the photograph she had sent me, the one with the belt and the shoes, and turned the screen brightness all the way up. The glow filled the car like a confession booth. I cropped the picture tighter, isolating the background, the evidence she had forgotten to hide. It was strange, how calm I felt. Betrayal should burn. Instead, it froze. When I finally started the car, the sky was bleeding into dusk. I drove without music, without destination, until the road curved back toward the interstate. Somewhere near Oceanside, I pulled over and sent the image to one contact. Susan L., Tom's wife. I didn't add a message. I didn't need to. The picture spoke every language of deceit. The reply came 30 minutes later. Just 3 words. I knew it. By then, Laura and Tom had probably finished dinner or were pretending to sleep, tangled in the kind of guilt that feels like int asterisk Macy. I imagined the vibration of their phones breaking whatever dream they'd bought for the weekend. I imagined the color draining from her face as Susan's name appeared on his screen. I started the drive north just as darkness swallowed the horizon. The highway was a river of white and red light, and I floated through it in silence. I didn't think about revenge. I thought about arithmetic, the cost of trust divided by years of effort. Every mile recalculated the equation. By the time I crossed into Oregon, the sum was 0. When I reached home, the house felt unfamiliar. The kids were asleep upstairs, the faint buzz of their nightlight humming through the hall. On the table sat a drawing Emily had made that afternoon. Stick figures, a crooked sun, the 4 of us holding hands. I stared at it longer than I should have. Children draw the world as they wish it to be, not as it is. The front door opened just after noon the next day. Laura stepped inside carrying her suitcase, her smile already rehearsed. "Hey," she said softly. "We made it back early." She said it without thinking, a pronoun too heavy for the lie it carried. I didn't answer. I watched her walk into the kitchen, watched her notice the silence, the absence of warmth. She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her expression shifted. Guilt recognizes itself instantly. "Is everything okay?" she asked. I handed her the phone. The photograph filled the screen between us. The one she had sent, now circled in red around the belt and sneakers. She didn't speak. Her lips parted, closed again. I could see the gears of explanation turning, searching for an angle that wouldn't collapse. "Whose are they?" I asked quietly. Her mouth trembled. "David, please." "Whose?" When she didn't answer, I opened another image. A screensh *T of the reservation confirmation. 2 guests. 1 king bed. The silence that followed was a verdict. "I saw you," I said, "at the hotel. With him." Her breath caught. "You followed me?" I verified the truth. She pressed her hands to her temples, shaking her head. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You lied. You planned it. And you sent me proof wrapped in a smile." She started to cry, the kind of crying that begs for sympathy. "It was a mistake. It just happened. No, I said. It didn't just happen. It happened because you wanted it to. Because the truth bored you. For a moment she looked small, almost fragile, standing in the same kitchen where we'd celebrated birthdays, where we'd planned futures. Please, David, she whispered. We can fix this. I shook my head. You already tried to fix it. With him. The conversation ended there. Not with shouting, not with violence, just exhaustion. I told her the house was mine, that it had been my grandfather's, my father's, and that she had no claim. She didn't argue. She knew. By evening, her suitcases were zipped, her eyes hollow. She moved to her sister's apartment across town. I stayed, surrounded by the ghosts of routine. The first night without her, I slept for 4 hours straight, the deepest sleep I'd had in months. Within days, word spread. Susan filed for divorce. Tom was suspended from his job pending review for misconduct. Office gossip did the rest. They were seen as tragic lovers at first, then as fools, eventually as nothing at all. Laura tried to control the story. She posted carefully edited photos, captions about healing and self-discovery. She told friends I'd been cold, unloving, obsessed with control. But truth has a smell, and lies can't mask it forever. I had the picture, the one she'd sent herself, the photograph that betrayed the entire performance. When I shared it privately with a few people who had asked too many questions, the sympathy evaporated. Even her own sister stopped defending her. The social circle she'd cultivated with manic precision began to shrink. Online, her posts drew silence. At parties, conversations shifted when she entered the room. Tom disappeared from Seattle soon after. Rumor said Arizona. I didn't care. I wasn't interested in tracking ghosts. What surprised me was not the collapse of their affair, but the speed of it. Betrayal burns fast. The flames devour not only what's false but everything nearby. One evening, Laura showed up at the door. She looked thinner, her hair unwashed, her eyes red. She asked to come in. I didn't stop her. She stood in the hallway, staring at the family photos still hanging on the wall. Our wedding, the children, vacations. Her hand trembled as she reached toward one frame, then stopped halfway. I lost everything, she said. No, I answered. You traded it. She nodded slowly, tears spilling. I thought he loved me. He loved your escape, I said. You were both running from the same thing, honesty. She sank onto the stairs. Do the kids know? Not yet, but they'll feel it. Kids always do. Can we at least try to? No, the word left my mouth like a stone dropping into deep water. There's nothing left to try. The foundation cracked the day you hit send. She left quietly, the door clicking shut behind her. I stood there a long time, staring at the space she'd occupied. The house seemed lighter. In the weeks that followed, life rearranged itself. Emily and Joshua stayed with me. I cooked, worked, drove them to school, told them bedtime stories that ended without lies. They missed her, of course. I let them. Missing is cleaner than pretending. Sometimes at night, when the house was still, I'd open the photograph again. Not to punish myself, just to remember the moment truth entered the room. The belt, the shoes, the glass of wine catching the light. People talk about closure like it's a destination. It isn't. It's a moment you stop asking questions. And for me, that moment came not with her confession, but with the sound of my own voice saying, I understand. Because I finally did. Love isn't destroyed by hate. It's destroyed by indifference. And that picture, bright, careless, damning, was the proof that she'd stopped caring long before I ever noticed. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. The courthouse smelled of paper and bleach, the air too thin for conversation. Laura stood beside her attorney, eyes fixed on the floor, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse like it was a lifeline. I didn't bring one. My hands were empty. It felt appropriate. The judge read through the settlement, each sentence another nail closing the coffin of what used to be us. The house remained mine, it always had been. Custody of the children was joint on paper, but everyone in that room knew the meaning of the word primary. When it was over, Laura looked at me for the first time in months. There was no anger left in her, only the quiet panic of someone realizing the door behind them has locked. "David," she said softly, "please don't make them hate me." "I don't have to," I answered. "They'll make up their own minds." She nodded, as if that was mercy. Then she turned and walked out, her heels striking the floor in slow surrender. The months that followed were an education in absence. I'd wake before dawn, make coffee, pack lunches, tie shoelaces, drive to school. The house breathed differently now. Less noise, less perfume, more honesty. The silence wasn't cruel. It was clean. Even the oak outside seemed taller, as if relieved of a secret. Emily adjusted faster than I expected. Children sense when truth has been restored. It steadies them. Joshua, though, asked questions I wasn't ready for. "Why isn't Mom here for dinner? Why does she live so far?" I told him the simplest version. Grown-ups sometimes break promises, but that doesn't mean love disappears. It just changes shape. He accepted that, for now. Laura moved into a one-bedroom apartment near the edge of the city. I saw it once when I dropped the kids off. A gray building with balconies stacked like regrets. Her new job was in retail, long hours on her feet, the kind of work that humbles without healing. She looked thinner, her smile slower. She still wore the same perfume, but on her it smelled like memory instead of warmth. Tom vanished. Rumor said Arizona, maybe Phoenix. Some whispered he'd found new work, others that his wife's divorce had bled him dry. I never cared enough to confirm. His name became background noise, a word that no longer triggered anything. Betrayal, once exposed, loses its flavor. The children spent weekends with Laura. At first she tried to make them extravagant, theme parks, fancy meals, new clothes. But money runs faster than guilt, and soon the visits became smaller, quieter. They returned home subdued, as if they sensed the performance behind her gestures. I didn't speak ill of her. I didn't have to. Time tells its own stories. One Sunday evening, Emily asked, "Do you still love Mom?" I thought about it carefully. "I love the part of her that gave me you," I said. She seemed to understand, or at least she stopped asking. Nights were the hardest. Not because I missed Laura, but because I missed the version of myself that still believed loyalty could save people. I'd sit on the porch with a drink, watching the wind move through the oak leaves, and think about how quiet honesty can be when it finally arrives. The photograph still lived in my phone. I never deleted it. Sometimes I'd open it, not to punish myself but to remember what blindness costs. The belt, the sneakers, the careless smile, each detail a chapter of the same lie. It reminded me that betrayal doesn't start with an affair. It starts with small omissions, with "I'm tired" instead of "I'm unhappy", with smiles that hide exhaustion, with eyes that drift past the person who loves you. One afternoon, Laura came to the house unannounced. The children were outside. I was repairing the porch railing. She stood at the foot of the steps, sunlight cutting across her face. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't climb the stairs. She just stood there, as if the height between us mattered. "I was wrong," she said. "I thought I could live with what I did, but I can't." "You already are," I replied. She took a shaky breath. "Do you ever think about starting over? For them?" I tightened the last screw in the rail and wiped my hands on a rag. Starting over means pretending it never happened. I can't raise my kids on lies. Her voice cracked. "I miss who we were." "So do I said. "But who we were wouldn't have done what you did." She left quietly. I watched her car disappear down the road, the same road she'd taken that first weekend to San Diego. It struck me how full circles look like closure when they're really just repetition. In August, Emily's school held a family day. Parents filled the gym with cameras and noise. Laura arrived alone, late, standing near the back. When Emily's class performed their song, she looked for both of us in the crowd. Her eyes found me first, then her mother. She smiled at each in turn. Two halves of a story she was too young to understand. For a brief second, Laura met my gaze across the room. There was something like gratitude there, or maybe just exhaustion. I looked away. Some silences are kinder than forgiveness. Weeks passed, then months. Life became ordinary again. The kids grew. Seasons shifted. The house settled into its new rhythm. I started running in the mornings, not to escape but to move forward. People at work said I looked lighter. Maybe I was. Grief, when finally accepted, weighs less than illusion. Every now and then, I'd hear Laura's name from mutual friends. They said she was quieter now, more careful with her words. Some even said she regretted everything. I believe that's true. Regret is the echo that follows every choice made without thought. But regret isn't redemption. It's just the bill arriving after the meal. The last time I saw her was outside a grocery store. She was with the kids, holding Joshua's hand. When she noticed me, she smiled, small, tentative. I nodded back. No bitterness, no warmth. Just acknowledgement. The kind two people share when they've finally stopped pretending. That night, Emily showed me a photo she'd taken of the three of them. In the picture, Laura's smile looked genuine. The kids were laughing. "See, Dad? Mom's better now," she said. I smiled. "Good," I told her. "Everyone should get better." After she went to bed, I sat at the table alone. The house was quiet again. The kind of quiet I'd once mistaken for loneliness but now recognized as peace. I thought about the leather belt, the one left behind in the hotel room. The hotel manager had called weeks earlier, lost and found. Did I want it returned? I told them no. They said it would be donated. I liked that. Something once worn by deceit might now hold up a stranger's jeans. Some symbols deserve to lose their meaning. I poured a drink and looked around the house my grandfather built. The wood still held its shape, every nail still doing its job. The only thing that had ever been weak here was the trust between people. Sometimes, late at night, I still wonder when exactly love turned into duty, and duty into resentment. Maybe it happened slowly, like rot beneath paint. Or maybe it happened all at once, the moment she clicked send. The world has a cruel sense of balance. She lost the comfort she took for granted. I lost the illusion I depended on. The children lost the picture of wholeness we once staged for them. And somewhere out there, Tom lost his career, his reputation, his anonymity. Everyone paid. Now the days are simple. I work, I cook, I listen to the small sounds that mean life continues. Sometimes Emily asks if I'll ever fall in love again. I tell her maybe, but only with someone who doesn't need to take pictures to prove where she is. The past no longer hurts. It instructs. And when I close my eyes at night, I see that photograph one last time. The belt, the sneakers, the half smile. They no longer burn. They remind. Because betrayal, once seen clearly, becomes its own teacher. And every teacher leaves you with a question you can't stop asking. Was I wrong to stop loving her? Or was I just finally learning how to love myself?